Welcome back to Weekend Express. We are taking a look at us making headlines on the dailies this morning. And on the front page of the Sunday Nation this morning, the headlines still there. The numbers question. The Electoral Commission still on the spot about the actual turnout of Thursday's poll. Confusion in the figures released as it races against time to tally the final result. And as we wait for those results, of course, a lot of politics is still being seen in the play in the country. Honorable Pasaris, what is the way forward? Wafula Chebukati only has 2 days constitutionally to announce the president. Really, Raila Odinga says he'll announce the way forward after the president has been announced. What does this mean for the country?
First of all, today is Sunday. I think we need to pray for him. We need to pray for him because he's a man under siege. We know that he is basically under a lot of pressure. So for me, I think today my Sunday is dedicated to praying for him so that he comes in and calls it as it is. We know we talk about free, fair, credible elections, and it starts right from our electoral bill, the funding bill. When it comes to funding, we fund the parties that are in office already, the ones that have so much more money. You have all these other 7 candidates, all right, that were in the race. Okay, let's say 6 because Raila Amolo Odinga had withdrawn from the race, even though he features on all the television stations. Those 7 candidates could not afford to employ agents across the entire country. So the only agents that were in any station were Jubilee agents. The only presiding officers and returning officers that were there were those that I'm sure in the background, they influenced the hiring of those presiding officers and returning officers. Unfortunately, we have lacked integrity. And I keep saying that much as we quote God and say God wants this and God doesn't want this, I know the wrath of God will come down on Kenya because every Kenyan who votes on tribal lines, who doesn't understand the issues, who doesn't want to vote because of doing away with corruption, inclusivity, the poverty. Look at the classrooms that most of the people went to vote. It's a shame that our children go to those classrooms. All I can say is when they kicked out the media, when we saw what happened in Kandara, when we talk about having a list and knowing who didn't vote and going for them, all I can tell you is we do not have a free, fair, credible process. I didn't hear anything about observers. The media were being kicked out and not allowed to take photographs. So whatever Chebukati is looking at Bomas is what has been sent to him. All right, so it's been put into the CAMS kit, it's been forwarded to him, he verifies it there. It is exactly what Jubilee wants to say these are the numbers. All right, now the next thing they want is call it, swear us in. And you can see the pressure they've been putting on him. Oh, he wants to resign. He doesn't want to swear us in. We want to change the electoral laws so that anyone can swear us in. I mean, we have done this wrong. For me, it is not important for you to be a president. It is important for you to leave a legacy where you have kept a country united and you have won with everybody saying, you know what, he won. And if this election was actually a free, fair, credible process and Raila Odinga lost, I know the man, he would say thank you. But what he's trying to do, if nothing else, let us clean up the IEBC. But it's not just the IEBC, it's you and I. It's the presiding officer, the returning officer. It is also empowering. Those presidential candidates, none of them had agents. None of them. But you will see, they will actually come back now and say, we accept the results. Why? Because money has changed hands. And when money changes hands for the wrong reasons, God's wrath comes to you. And that's why the turnout was very, very low.
All right. Now then do we move forward from here? Because we're already here. I mean, can we really go back on this process now? When 87% of polling stations across the country have already voted in this election. National exams are meant to start on Tuesday this week. Elections in the 4 Nyanza counties have been postponed indefinitely. And the likelihood of them happening after national exams have begun is something that then would be logistically a bit harder, so to speak. So, I mean, Kevin, where do we go from here as a country? The opposition says the IEBC still needs to be cleaned up. Wafula Chebukati only has 2 days to announce the results. Many are saying this election is only the beginning of a deeper conversation that the country needs to have. Which way forward?
We lost, sorry, in my view, we lost the opportunity in 2007, 2008, when we had the National Dialogue Reconciliation discussions led by His Excellency Kofi Annan. And you note that we had the minimum expectations. I think they were called Agenda 4 issues. Had the country invested then to be able to address some of these issues? Because if you look at NASA now NRM, for instance, they talk about issues to do with justice. They are talking about addressing historical injustices. And I think that for Kenya to be able to move forward, the talk about peace has to be really nuanced with certain aspects of justice and truth in it. Now, the second thing that we must do as a country is to speak the truth. And remember that truth comes with honesty, truth comes with a relationship, truth comes with the ability to accept and not necessarily move forward, but to be able to generate recommendations and also solutions to the things that we are addressing. As it is right now, I believe that His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Right Honorable Prime Minister must provide direction and guidance to the country. And what I mean by this is, one, we must really, in my view, see a possibility of them engaging and not necessarily through proxies. I know and I am aware that there are people who are talking to them, but I think that this discussion needs to now be seen to be presenting certain soft spots or softer landing for the country. Because if you listen to some of the discussions or other talks by some of their hardliners, then you really get surprised. And so comments like secessions, comments like swearing in our own president, these are things that should be preparing the country for a rough ride. And the third thing, in my view, is that really we have given a lot to our politicians as the populace, or rather as citizens of this country. We must now begin to move to the point of generating our own narratives as people. Politicians must not be the people who are setting the agenda every day. And you look at the media, it is the politicians, both mainstream, electronic, print, and even social media. It is the politicians that are setting the agenda. What are these alternative narratives that Kenyans actually, because every day Kenyans wake up and they are doing extraordinary things. Can we be able to see these things that are also not only aiming at putting food on our tables, but also working at building national cohesion and reconciliation among communities? And Michelle, this really has to bring in the aspect of how we move forward as a country. And what this means to me is, for instance, it is so sad that people still die in this country because of elections. The security sector players must begin to also learn lessons. We don't have to shoot people using live bullets. This country has invested really enormously in security. And this therefore means, in my view, that police officers, for instance, and other security players within that sector must begin to look at what are these alternative means of engaging with crowds, for instance. And the citizens, we must begin to talk about things, for instance, alternative nonviolence actions. What do these mean to us? And is it possible just to see policemen engaging with citizens in a manner to address their issues and not necessarily see the amount of brutality that we are seeing from the police? So in terms of moving forward as a country, from a leadership and governance perspective, one, we really need to address our systems, because even as Bomas is going on, you can tell that there are serious system issues, not systemic per se, but system issues insofar as what the output really means. And number two is leadership. President Uhuru Kenyatta and Right Honorable Prime Minister, we must really see leadership from these people. And to them, I think that taking hard stance will not help this country at this point. They must be able to begin presenting softer landings for the country so that this country can be able to move on. And I think that the apathy that has been evidenced, or rather shown by the turnout in the election, I wouldn't say is a vote of no confidence to the president, because almost half of this country voted for him and half of this country did not vote for him. This therefore presents an opportunity which we lost in 2007, 2008. But God is a fair God. God is a God of a second chance. We have the opportunity for the second chance right now.
Are we using this second chance, right, Honorable Passaris? I mean, considering that the final results might, there's a big possibility they might be announced today, even with the 4 Nyanza counties not having voted. What next after that announcement for the opposition?
When I read the body language of Chebukati, I do not see him calling this election. I think he's going to definitely, he knows that there were not enough agents to actually, say that this election was free, fair, and credible. Number two, if he does call the election and says, yes, here, Uhuru, your certificate, as he did in the last one, under a lot of pressure, then basically we know that he had no other choice. But I think everybody has a choice. He has a choice to call it or not to call it. So if he decides to call it and give the certificate, we've got a few cases in the High Court, in the Supreme Court, that will be heard. and then we will see what will happen at that particular point. Right now, I think what is important is that we basically let our children do their exams. We let the court process finish. We let Chebukati do what he has to do. And we remain peaceful as Kenyans, right, until such a time that we know what direction. And I hope that if we are going to end up in a situation where we're going to have another election in 90 days, which is what us as NASA are expecting to have, then we cut off the electioneering period, right? We actually clean up IEBC, which can be done very, very quietly without interfering with the business community or the people of Kenya, because we've all campaigned. We set the IEBC right, and then we have an election where it's free, fair, and credible. It's all-inclusive. The whole country participates. And then we move on. Because, you know, going for 5 years, going for another 5 years with the country not feeling inclusive, it's a part of the country not feeling inclusive, it's going to be a very hard task for the Uhuru government or the Jubilee government to actually unite this country, because they failed to do it in the last 5 years.
But is cleaning up the IEBC the only solution moving forward?
No. Cleaning up the IEBC is one of the solutions. The other solution is obviously we need to make people feel that they're part of Kenya. It was very sad to see a lady on national TV saying, najivunia kuwa Mkenya, lakini navumilia kuwa Mkenya. You know, and then I posted that and I said it was really saddening to see this. And a lot of Kenyans feel they're not Kenyans. And I'll tell you what, you see it in the hospitals where people can't afford the basic NHIF, which is a fantastic thing for Kenyans, but they can't afford it. You've got homes in this country, homes that are catering for the very, very many orphans that we have, that the government does not even provide NHIF cards to, no support to them. We have actually let our social fabric and the support of our citizens, the most vulnerable and poor. We have a lot of initiatives, but it's not reaching the people. Pesa haifiki mashinani. And we have a problem there. Poverty is real across the country. Corruption breeds poverty. We're not dealing with the issues right now. Tribalism, for me, come on, Kenyans. We're one Kenya, one people. We cannot preach peace if we don't want to collectively resolve the issues. And I think every Kenyan should want to know, not that my president is the president, my tribe is the president. We won because we are the ones in power, we're the ones who own Kenya. No, we want a Kenya where we are all sisters and brothers, and we can now forge ahead for national unity. And the issues, the emotive issues of Kenya have to be resolved, because if you don't resolve them, it's a problem that we're going to give to our children. And I think as adults, you don't give problems to your children. You solve those problems. So I'm hoping that, you know, I mean, let's just wait and see, but Kenya, if we're going to pray, let's pray with sincerity.
All right. And of course, even as we pray, we're praying for peace in many parts of the country. On page 89 of the paper of The Nation here, it says many parts, I mean, an uneasy calm has returned in many parts of the country, as much as there is no let-up in most of these areas. But this election has seen the topic of police brutality and excessive use of force come to the fore in this country like never before. On the day of the election on Thursday, we had reports of several people being shot allegedly by police officers, many of them having said to be protesters, but when you take a look at witness accounts, they say many of these people are minding their own business. Some of them were in the comfort of their own homes. This is something you experience a lot, Kevin, especially with the county governance watch. How does this reflect on the country, considering that the international community is watching? The international community has had a very keen eye on this election, and these are the issues that are coming to the forefront of the international scene.
I see a country that is at war with itself, especially from election preparedness, right from May, when we were heading to August, when we saw the president and the security sector, the primary security sector players showcasing how prepared we were. And we were seeing water cannons, we were seeing this military artillery. I honestly, like I said then, will still say today that it was unnecessary. And it really still is unnecessary. Not again that from a governance perspective, and in a bid to address some of the issues that we have as a country, we had the police reform issues. And part of that, we saw police being vetted, and the rogue police officers were being fired. And we saw lots of things happening. And that, again, boosted public confidence in the police. But if you then present the kind of scenarios that we are seeing today, then it really reflects on the people that we are. Last evening, I had a discussion with some of my friends from Migori, and they were telling me, Kevin, we have seen police officers breaking into people's shops to get food. And from Bondo, where I come from, which is neighboring my home district in Rarieda, they were saying that in Bondo, police officers were breaking shops to be able to get water and food to eat and drink, respectively. This should not be happening in Kenya. Kenya is such a very good country to live in, and for us to be able to see our own police officers doing this to be able to access food. I have my own friends from the police force who were telling me, Kevin, we were just told to report at Jogo House, got into these big vehicles, and off we were. Really, preparedness. So if I see police officers behaving in a manner that they are behaving, and of course I'm sure that you've also seen this photo of a police officer shedding tears on social media. We're not so sure why the person is shedding tears, but of course in empathy with what is happening to both the citizens and just your own family members, brothers, sisters, and friends. Michelle, this should not be happening in Kenya today. And when I see people coming on TV and telling us the country is calm, we are moving on very well, we are prepared, I think this is the truth and honesty we are talking about, that we should be able to be truthful and honest with ourselves. So it is wrong, in my view, that in 2017, citizens are being brutalized by the police, who are also their own relatives and friends. And this is happening at a point when the systems are telling us we are prepared to deal with this issue. So it is not right, and I expect that institutions such as IPOA, institutions such as the Office of the Inspector General of Police, institutions such as the Cabinet, the Office of the CS for Interior, should then be able to come out and take action. Note again that in some parts of this country, we've seen even county commissioners and heads of police come and say that the people you are seeing in uniforms are not our police officers. Right. Some photos on social media, whether fake or real, we've seen police officers with rastas. What do these people do? What does that mean to the country? So I think that for us to be able to have a country that is going to be able to move forward in a manner that we are expecting and saying, then some of these serious issues really need to be addressed. And how to address that, I think, as I've already said, and my friend Esther is also agreeing, we must get to a point of talking to each other. And that is the only way we will be able to address these issues. All
right, Esther, your thoughts on this issue of police brutality, even as you wind up?
I spent the better part of yesterday morning in Kenyatta National Hospital visiting the victims of the Kawangware, what happened in Kawangware over the last 2 days. Now, I saw young men with bullet wounds. First of all, I cannot understand why the police are actually using live bullets instead of rubber bullets. Rubber bullets are an alternative. Why are you using live bullets? Then I saw two men. Both of them have head injuries, bit with the rungu on the head. They've got blood clots. One of them was hit with a stone. So they've got blood clots in their head, and one of them is blind. You know, he kept saying, Pasaris, is that you? I can't see you. Young men, his future lost, 21, 22. His parents there crying. And then you've got another young man who's actually lost it because of the pressure in his head. This was really sad to see. There was an old Kikuyu man who was shot in his house past midnight. The police went in. Now, having said that, and the police who was crying, for me, I think he saw something that his own did that he wasn't right. An institution needs to check itself. All right? We've got IPOA, yes, but the police, there are some policemen that are good. All right? Let's not demonize the entire police force. There are some policemen that are good. You know, I once read a book called The Science of Getting Wealthy or Rich by Wallace D. Wattle. And he said it is better to have a government that is not good than to have total anarchy, no government. We've seen it in the places like the Arab Spring, Libya, Syria, you know. You need a government, okay? But you need a government, something's got to give. The police force has to check itself. But the problem is their bosses are probably leaning towards one direction. So the bosses, if you come to the boss and says, oh, Inspector so-and-so did something wrong, and you report, you'll probably get fired. So for me, again, it's a question. We want peace. We want love. We want this country not to burn. We want to stay as one. We pray about it in every corner. Do me a favor, God knows what's in our hearts. Let us not be deceitful to God, because you cannot be deceitful to God. The police force, there are some that are demonic and evil, but there's a good lot of them that are good. Now we need to make sure that the leaders, right, in every institution have to be people that actually care about cohesion in this country. Right. I mean, the national cohesion, we need to fire Caparo. I mean, he did nothing for peace. You know, I could do a better job. Okay, so for me, let us try and ensure that we have people who really care about this country, not watu wetu, watu wa inchi yetu.
All right. And of course, we keep waiting to see whether there will be that dialogue between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. President Kenyatta saying he is willing to meet him after this election, even as we wait on word from the National Tallying Center at the Bomas of Kenya. What is the way forward for the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission tallying? Is it in its final stretch? Will the IEBC Commissioner, our chairperson rather, Ophelia Chebukati, announce the winner of the repeat presidential election today? Only time will tell. This is the Weekend Express. I'm going to take a short commercial break, but just stay with us. When we come back,